Good afternoon. Welcome back to Metropolitan Community College's International Intercultural Education virtual programming honoring LGBTQIA+ Pride Month. LGBTQ Pride Month is commemorated each year in the month of June to honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in New York City, when patrons and supporters of the Stonewall Inn resisted the police harassment and persecution to which LGBTQ Americans were commonly subjected. This marked the beginning of a movement to outlaw discriminatory laws and practices against LGBTQ Americans. Today, Pride Month celebrations are diverse and attract millions of participants around the world. In June and throughout the year, LGBTQIA+ Pride Month is an excellent time to learn about important people in history, read literature that features LGBTQIA people, analyze heterosexism, and explore its causes and solutions. The 2021 national theme is You Are Included. Today's format brings a panel of local representatives to share with you their diverse experiences in our community working and living with PFLAG issues. PFLAG is the first and largest organization for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ+ people, their parents and families, and allies. Your microphones are shut down during the presentation, but at any time during today's panel, please send your questions. You can start sending them now to moderator Barbara Velasquez. I will be sharing questions with our panelists. The names of those who present questions will not be shared. We want to encourage everyone in the audience to participate, and I will state that our panel members welcome any and all questions. They will let you know if they can't answer them, but they do not want you to hold back from information that you'd like to gain. There will be an online evaluation address in the chat. Please look at it, click on it, and share your feedback. And we're ready to get started. So welcome, Mark, who's going to lead the panel discussion. You are included.
Well, good morning, or good afternoon, I guess, everybody. There are four of us who are panelists. We're still waiting for one of us to join, but the way we typically do these panels is that each of us that are on the panel will introduce ourselves, tell you a little bit about our story, and then once all of us are introduced, we'll start taking your questions. And I would really like to reiterate what Barbara said about the questions. Please ask your questions. We want to try and get you answers. If you're not sure if it's an appropriate question, but you're really curious, please ask it. If there's something that some piece of information is too personal, we'll tell you that, but we want to at least try and answer the question for you. So I'll start out. By the way, each of the four of us that are on this panel have very different representations in the LGBTQIA+ community. A different set of experiences. We come from a different letter in that acronym. Let us get ourselves introduced, and please feel free to ask those questions and direct them at any one of us or at the whole panel, however works for you, whatever gets you the information you want. I'll start out. So I'm Mark. I identify as a gay man. I am a little older than probably what your typical stereotypical view of a gay man might be. I'm in my 50s. I've been out for about 15 years, so I didn't come out until I was well into adulthood. I was married to a woman. My first marriage was to a woman. I have a son from that marriage. And my second marriage is to a man. My husband is Bob. We have 3 grandsons at this point. And so if you hear screaming in the background, a couple of our grandsons are here with us today. So I apologize for that. I work as a computer programmer, and my husband is a teacher at Omaha Central. We're a very ordinary middle-aged couple, and if both of us weren't, if one of us were a woman, we would be indistinguishable from middle-aged couples across the country. There'd be nothing remarkable about us whatsoever. And with that, I think I'll go on to have the other panelists introduce themselves. Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Jennifer Pansing. I'm married to Tom for 55 years. We grew up in Lincoln, and I taught while Tom was in law school. We met in high school. We went to UNL, and I taught while Tom was in law school. And at the end of that time, had began to have a family and had 2 boys. And after Tom served in the Army during the Vietnam War, we settled in Omaha and have been here for about 50 years. I am on the panel as the P, the parent. When our first son was returning from his Christmas at home, his sophomore Christmas at home, he went to school on the East Coast near Boston. He told us the night before he was to return that he is gay. And I can share more about that coming out experience, but my story is a little old because he's 52 now. So it's not a brand new story, but I think it's a similar story to many families. I will say that our reaction to it had more to do with dealing with our son, who was a senior at Central High again, at that time, because of his concern. He was mostly concerned that his friends find out. And we went to counseling and immediately for him. And the counselor was very wise and said, Dan, what do you think would happen if you told your friends? And it was like a weight was lifted off his shoulders. And we had permission from our older boy to share it. So anyway, I welcome questions. Am I forgetting something, Mark? It's been a while since we've done this. Or since
Nope, let's see where the questions take us. So the next panel member is John. And John, if you'd go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is John Heller, and I'm extremely old. I just turned 73, and I'm fairly new out as a transgender man using the pronouns he and him. I was married for a short time. I have a daughter who's 35, and I'm trying very hard at my advanced age to become the man I always knew I was. And it's been an amazing journey to do that. I would not have done it without the understanding of my daughter, who I told her 2018 would be a different year because I knew I was going to start transitioning, and she thought I had cancer. So when I told her I was transgender, she was quite relieved. And then I got my hair cut, and my hairdresser thought I had cancer. And then I went outside without a shirt on, and my neighbors thought I had cancer. So I have a cancer theme running through my transition. But PFLAG was very helpful for me to transition. I'm going to therapy, and I feel like it's an ongoing journey that I will continue on. But it's been great to finally become myself, or start to become myself. It's a journey.
Our fourth panelist is Lynn. And Lynn, please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Lynn. I'm on my wife's computer, and we couldn't change the name earlier. It's been interesting. Jennifer and Mark and I have been doing these for over a decade. And one of the things that's been interesting is when we first started, very few people knew anybody that was gay or lesbian or bisexual, let alone trans. And there was just an article in the USA yesterday. And according to the Gallup poll from about a month ago, 50% of people that are between the ages of 18 to 29 know somebody who is transgender. And between 30 and 49, 31%. And even the old people like John that are over 65, 19% of the people know. And the other question that I used to ask is when somebody's born or they hear that somebody has been born, one of the first questions that people always ask is it a boy or a girl? And I'm sure my parents were asked. But what happens if you can't tell? Because that's what happened to me. I was born with both anatomical features. So I had both a penis and a vulva. And my parents, or my mom, because my dad was off in the Second World War. And so they decided I was going to be born a boy. And it didn't work out that way. Jennifer, I think you said you celebrated 52 years of marriage?
55.
55, okay. One of the things of getting older, sometimes you can't remember all these dates or numbers. My wife and I have celebrated 42 years. So we're not too far behind you. We have 2 daughters. And that's all that I want to say. I have met a lot of interesting people through my lifetime. When you find out that you're intersexed, you can find out that your genitalia or your hormones or chromosomes can be a whole lot different than just XX or XY. My chromosomes are kind of messed up. I found out that I'm different than just XX or XY. It causes all types of problems, but I was still able to have kids because I have been on extra testosterone. I've been on extra estrogen. It can really goof up your life in a whole lot of different ways. So I will answer any question that anybody has. But as Mark mentioned earlier, I will reserve the right to not embarrass my wife. But you can't embarrass me because I've been asked just about any question that anybody can ask me. And if I sound a little funny today, it's because my sinuses are all messed up because of allergies. So anyway, that's it. Now for the questions. And it's good to see so many people here.
Great to see you.
Barb, just a good job. Thank you.
Okay, Barbara, I think we're ready for questions then.
Right. Thanks, everybody, for getting us started with your introductions. Our first question is for Jennifer. How does your son identify?
He identifies as a gay man. He is married to a man. The wedding was in Iowa before Nebraska legalized gay marriage, or before the United States did. It was legal in Iowa. And we were present, and his brother and wife and 2 little children, and my husband's 93-year-old mother. It was really wonderful that she came. And that was it. They didn't ask the rest of the family. It was very small. And he works at the University of Pennsylvania, and he lives in Philadelphia. I think that answers the question. I hope so.
Thank you. We have an audience member who would like the statistics from the Gallup poll of how many people know someone who is transgender.
They do not say how many people they talk to. They just say that the Gallup survey was conducted May 3rd to the 18th. And according to the poll, they have 4 age divisions, 18 to 29, they said 50%. The way it's worded is Americans who say they have friends, relative, or co-workers who have come out to them as transgender. And the first age is 18 to 29, and it's 50%. Ages 30 to 49 is 31. Ages 50 to 65 is 24%. Ages 65 plus is 19%. At one time, when the National Center for Transgender Equality interviewed about 3,000 people, it was less than 9%, and that survey was taken in 2016. So this one would have been this year. So the number has gone up. And when they talk about these numbers, this is not saying that, you know, somebody, John, help me out, who's the lady, Laverne Cox. It's not saying somebody like Laverne Cox that, you know, from being on television or somebody like that. It's from knowing somebody personally. So here they say friend, relative, or co-workers. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. We appreciate your coming with the research to help with those type questions. Okay, next, my mom is a lesbian, and often she, my sister, and I are asked how she could be gay when she had kids. Keep in mind, I'm an 80s child. Were you ever asked these questions? And if so, how do you respond to people who ask you about being gay after being married and having a child?
I'll take this one. It's actually a really good question. And so in my case, I was married to a woman for 8 years. We did have a son, and I'm going to back up just a second. So I identify as a gay man, and I think one of the things that we struggle with a little bit here is how we label people. And so do you label based on how I identify or what my behavior is? So for example, my sexual history includes 3 people, which isn't that many really. 2 of those are women, and there's only 1 man in my sexual history, and that's my current husband. But I identify as a gay man, and I get kind of questioned on that a lot. The reality is, you know how you identify. You know yourself. If you don't know yourself, you have a journey of discovery to go down. And once you know yourself, what your history was and who you were married to and who you had relationships to in the past isn't really relevant to that, to how you identify yourself once you understand yourself. So that's kind of the answer that I give to people who ask, you know, how can you be a gay man if you were married and, you know, had these other relationships? Well, I know I'm a gay man. I know what I'm attracted to and who I want to love. So that's a thing that I figured out when I was in my late 30s. It took me a long time to get there. But once I knew that, it's just how I identify. And, you know, it may not be what everybody expects of me, but that's just the way it is. I kind of hope I answered that question.
Did anybody else on the panel have a related comment they'd like to share?
I think one thing to add to what Mark had to say is till the last 20, 30 years, it wasn't till, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on the year, but I think it was 1973 that they ruled before that homosexuality was a crime. And so one of the things that people used to do was get married because this was what was expected of you. And so to try to be a normal, what we considered a normal person, it was people would get married to cover up what was going on in your life. And all you have to do is look at like Hollywood and all the people that were gay or lesbian that would get married to somebody or act like they were married and had a normal life. And if you look at some of the really leading men like Rock Hudson, all the women that he dated that were beautiful because it was the normal thing to do. And then you find out that he was dying of AIDS in the mid 80s. It wasn't unusual for people to do something like this to get married. But because of even being trans, it was a mental condition. And so you try to do the same thing. So I had daughters with my wife because it was the normal thing to do so that you carried on your normal life. But you come to the realization that this is who you are, and to try to live as the person that you really are, sometimes we accept ourselves later in life. And sometimes we're slow to accept ourselves because it's difficult to say, you know, I'm not like everybody else, but I have to accept myself if I'm going to keep on living. And it's the same way dealing with alcoholism, drug addiction, or anything else. If you have this problem, whether I'm an alcoholic, you don't just go out one day and have a drink and hit bottom and say, well, I'm an alcoholic, I'm going to quit. It takes you a while to deal with alcoholism or anything else.
If I can add I'm sorry, go ahead, Lynn.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, I hope that helps.
The one thing I would add a little bit too is that for me there was a conflict. I wanted two things. I wanted to be authentically myself, but I also really wanted the being married and having a family and all of that. And that was only available to me at the time that I was becoming an adult in the late 80s. That was only really available to me if I married a woman. And so I chose to hide that part of myself that was gay, and I chose to go down the path that let me have a family. And that was a thing really important to me, and I didn't understand a way to both be a gay man and have a family. That's not unusual today, but in the late 80s it was something that really wasn't done. And so it wasn't until I was in my late 30s then that I realized that was a choice that had a lot of consequences for me. It had a lot of consequences in terms of addictive behavior and health issues that were developed because I had submerged this part of myself that didn't want to be submerged. So I'm hoping that I'm answering the question. Today is a different world. Today it's not that unusual to be able to say I'm a gay man and I want a family. But at the time I wanted both of those things, in the late 80s, I couldn't have both of those.
Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your sincere and in-depth answers. So we thank another audience member who sent this question. Recently, someone came out to me as trans. I was asked if I knew what inverted body parts are, and I do not have any knowledge of that subject. Can anyone address that for me, please?
No, I don't know what inverted body parts means.
Lynn, do you know what that is?
I think what they're referring to is and I hope I'm right on this, that it's taking a penis and inverting it and making it into a vagina. That would be my guess. It's the most common form of surgery for a male to a female.
Oh, the most common form of
Okay.
what would be considered a bottom surgery? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And it's been performed. I think the first one was performed in 1921. There were some before that, but there's no good medical records. But the first one was in 1921 in Germany. There was a movie made about it. Oh, so sometimes my mind will think of this in a half hour, but the movie was made
To that.
and I can't even think the star of it, but it's the most common form. Now they're using colon and perineums and a few other things to do for lubrication and a few other things, but it's still the most common form. So I hope that's answering the question. If not, ask Barb to for my email and I'll answer it personally for more information if that'll help.
Thank you. Lynn, we have the question, tell us how you identify.
I identify as an intersex lesbian. It was always tough in high school because I was always, unfortunately, if Mark would move his hand for just a second, see that beautiful little hair underneath his nose and chin and that. If I could have grown that, maybe I would have identified as a male in high school. I never had to shave till I was 27. When you start to grow breasts, when you're going through puberty, and so you have to get testosterone shots, and you find out that you get teased because you carry your books like a girl and you walk like a girl and all these other silly things. And you have to act like a boy because people tell you that you're a boy. But you try to go out for sports as a boy. It gets to be very confusing. And as we mentioned, as Mark mentioned, I lived as a girl. My first job after college was as a woman. I did not know at the time that there's such a thing as Social Security matching your gender and your Social Security record and your name. And so I lost my job because my gender did not match the gender that they had at work. So I was asked to leave. I did get another job with a recommendation of the guy that had to let me go. I was also, I've never had to change my name, which is also tough. So I don't have this problem like Mark if he was transitioning to become Mary, let's say. So I've never had to worry about that. My name's always been Lynn, which has made it both a blessing and a curse. But when you find out, especially when you find out later on in life that you were born with these parts, and you find out that you still have one ovary, you find out that when you have bottom surgery, that the doctor took out your old vagina because it was had fat growing around it and that. And when you have electrolysis down below and the electrologist tells you that you have scars down there, that looks like something was sewn up, and you find this out when you're close to 60. It just kind of makes you wonder about your whole thing. And one of your proud moments is when your daughter says to you, "Oh, you're just acting like a guy," and you're going, "Yay, I finally made it," and things like this. You know, it really, really makes you wonder sometimes if you're not going crazy. And when you find out that you have all kinds of health problems, partly because of hormones really can screw up your body, and I don't know how many females are in the group here, but hormone fluctuations are bad enough on a normal life. And one of the things when I was taking hormones back in my in my teens and 20s, and that we used to do what was called cycling. So it would put you on a normal female cycle. And so you'd have highs and lows. So you would be just like any other female. And you'd hit highs and then lows and that. Now, when I'm on hormones, they try to just make it so I'm on, just a straight level. There's no estrogen fluctuations or anything like that, like there used to be when I was younger. And then when I decided that I wasn't going to do that because of a friend's suicide and a few other things that happened, and I was going to be just a good old man, it really, really screwed up my life. I spent quite a few years talking to a therapist, trying to make sure that everything was okay. And one of the things that I did find that I still worry about is I have a lot of friends that go through a lot of things because of any one of these letters. And I have a lot of friends that have been alcoholics, drug addicts, and everything else. And they think that if they can just say, my friend, my therapist have helped me deal with being gay. My therapist has helped me with my drug addiction. They've helped me with my religious problems or whatever their issue is, but they never want to deal with a lot of their other issues. It doesn't work that way if you won't talk about some of the core issues and problems that you're having. And I had to talk about a lot of things in my life that I really didn't want to talk about. So I saw therapists for a long time. And I don't know if it made me any better, but at least it's helped me deal with a lot of personal issues that it was hard to deal with because of so many things. When you find out that, well, it's like one step forward, two steps backwards, sometimes one step forward, 10 backwards, and you just keep going like this. So it's been tough. So I hope that helps.
All right, we're going to move to Jennifer. Jennifer, what was your reaction and the reaction of others when your son came out?
Well, fortunately, I think for him, his grandparents were all college educated. That was a little bit unusual. And he asked us to tell them, and they were fine. They regretted it. They didn't want him to have a tougher life. I didn't, at that time, it was 1989, January of 1989, when he left for his sophomore year in college. And for months, or maybe years, at least for a couple of years, I was just panicked about AIDS. It was, to me, the most dangerous possibility. He was not rejected by us ever, but I did feel bad as I look back on it. I was just thinking about it today, that we didn't fly back soon after he told us to the East Coast. You know, it was a lot of money, and we were paying tuition to a fine school, and he was, in my mind, so far away. I think that our son, who was home and a senior in high school, was really our biggest concern, because he was crying the next morning after my husband took our son Wally to the airport to fly back to college. And Dan said, you know, Mom, what you've said about us getting counseling if we need it, I think we need it. So we were able to find someone who would see us that very day, if you can believe it, and a wonderful woman. And she said, Dan, what would happen if you just told everyone? And it was like, he was so relieved. He didn't want to have this big secret. He was a very well-liked kid, and very outgoing and social. And once he told people, in a way, that outed Tom and me, because a lot of those people were the children of our friends. We never felt rejection. I think I felt some regret that his life would be harder. It's been a journey. It's a long time. I mean, he was, let's see, he would have been going back to college. He would have been around 20, and he's 52. So this is a long story. And if this had happened to us today, our reaction would have been even, I wouldn't say more accepting, because I don't think it could have been more accepting, but it would have been easier for us, because we now know so many gay people and have other friends who have gay children. And we were really the first of a lot of our friends. And I'm in a bridge group, or excuse me, a book club. And there are 12 of us. And I think we figured out, and it's some siblings and some children, but I think there are eight young gay people in that association. So and that was because of some book we read. We don't sit around talking about that generally, but I hope that answered it. Do you think there's more that I kind of get off track, Barbara. Did I answer it?
No, I think you answered the question. Now, for you and everybody, this can kind of be a follow-up to that question. Do you find that you are more accepted by mainstream society today than in the past? And you sort of said that, Jennifer. Or do you find only majority acceptance within the LGBTQ community?
I think there's no question that I'll just give a little example. This is kind of offbeat. And the panel's probably heard me say it before. My husband plays golf, where everybody kind of sits around afterwards, and when he plays with men, not with me, or with, a mixed group. And there used to be gay jokes. And when Wally came out, he didn't ever lecture or get furious. He would just get up and leave and come right home. And there haven't been gay jokes ever for 20 years now. Things are different. There's the acceptance level of the general, and that's a pretty conservative group of people, I would say. We aren't, but I think that's an indication that it's just not acceptable to make fun of that,
How about other panelists on that question?
I think that I've started telling people in the last, 5 to 10 years that as a gay man, I'm not the interesting one anymore. The gay and lesbian folks are much more accepted. I mean, the G and the L and even to a degree, the bisexual people are much more accepted. Where we are still clearly struggling as a society to be accepting is when we get to the transgender people, and I'm using trans in this case as a big umbrella, meaning all of the people who are gender variant in some way, whether they transition or not. That's a sort of, as a society, a newer topic, and so that's not as well understood or accepted yet. I'm also going to throw on to that too, that I think a lot of it is exposure. It's just the fact that that gay and lesbian and bisexual are so much more accepted now is a function of people know more of us. More of us are out. People, you know, you talk about who knows a gay or lesbian person. Pretty much everybody does, and Lynn kind of hinted at this at the very beginning. You know, one of the things we used to do 15 or so years ago at the beginnings of these panels was ask how many of you know somebody who's gay or lesbian, and how many of you know somebody who's transgender. And the percentages that have increased over the years is amazing. It's just utterly amazing. You know, we used to get to the question of how many know or have a family member who's gay. We get, you know, 20% of the audience would stick their hands up, and now it's like 80%. You know, everybody knows somebody who's gay. Trans used to be, you know, we'd be lucky if we got 1 or 2 people in an audience to put up their hands and say, I know someone who's trans. And, you know, that's still less than half, but it's certainly increased a lot. And so the fact that things would be different now, are different now for people who are coming out just now, is really a matter of, as a society, we've been exposed much more to it.
I didn't even know there was such a thing as a transgender man. I had heard about a couple of transgender women. Renee Richards, a tennis player, heard of her. Other than that, I didn't know, and I had no idea that transgender could even be a male thing. It was because of the internet and me searching around on the internet and also searching my soul. I realized I was that thing, but I did not know how to put an understanding on what I felt in myself for decades. And it wasn't talked about. It was unheard of, something that you just didn't go there. And it's all new. It's all new, fairly new, especially transgender things are very new.
Thanks again to everyone. I'm going to put a couple questions together that are for Lynn. There's a question about how did you find out that you were intersex? Is what the question says. Did you always know, or did some medical test help you understand that? And along with that, was your family supportive of you as you grew up, Lynn, or did you find support elsewhere?
I found out my grandmother was a midwife, and she delivered me because I was born in a small town here in Nebraska, and the doctor didn't get there. So, and I was a blue baby. So the umbilical cord was wrapped almost 2.5 times around my neck. And when I was cleaning out a bunch of old letters that my mom had, there was a letter that the nurse wrote that finally ended up there with the doctor, saying that my grandmother had saved my life by getting rid of the umbilical cord, and that the doctor had removed the one ovary that was in the vagina, and they had sewn up the vulva, and that everything else would be taken care of as I grew up, and that. And back then, and even today, as John just mentioned, and Mark had made a reference to, there's still a lot of shame in just being transgender, let alone being intersex. And doctors on today make a decision on whether you're going to be a boy or a girl in most cases. And some of the stories that I hear talking to other people, it's kind of a crime what happens to us, that a lot of us have no idea until you reach puberty or later. I did not know this until about 7-8 years ago, because nobody would talk about it, because nobody wants to have somebody that used to be called a hermaphrodite. Intersex is a fairly recent term, just like transgender was not something that even in college that I got to study, because the term wasn't used then. It was transsexual until about 1975, I think. So it's only less than 50 years old. And PFLAG was the first one that even started accepting transgender, and that was only 22 years ago, 1999. So that's how recent some of these things were. And intersex has only been used officially in common language for about 25 years, maybe less than that. So nobody in my family would talk about it. They would talk about me being a blue baby because that was acceptable. When you start studying some of this stuff, being intersexed can be as common as 1 in 1,500 births. So it's not that unusual. It's as common as being redheaded, which I also happen to be, which is like 2% of all people born. But I do want to say, when you have 7 billion people, 2% is a huge, huge number. So it's not like, oh, there's only 12 of us, so we're pretty special people. 2% of 7 billion is a large, large number. My family was very accepting for the most part of being trans, which I thought I was because I knew I was different. They were more accepting of being intersex because it explained a lot of things. The thing that was kind of sad was I had quadruple bypass surgery 27 years ago. And shortly after that, I had to have a hernia repaired. And at the time when they repaired that, the doctor found out that I still had one ovary. And so when I went to have the bottom surgery, my internist wrote down that when I had the bottom surgery, that it was intersex surgery rather than transgender surgery or anything like that. So when I was talking to some of the other places where I've had all my health problems, I was looking at my medical record and it said intersex surgery. And so I was talking to the internist and I said, so why does it say intersex surgery? And I've been to this doctor for close to 26, 27 years, something like that. And he said, well, did you know that you had an ovary? And I said, no, I didn't know this. Why didn't you tell me? And he said, well, I thought you knew. And so it's just one of these things that so many things come to you later in life that you never knew about. And you go through some of these things and you're going, wait, oh, my doctor knew, but I never knew. And nobody tells you anything because everybody thinks that you know all these things about your medical history and everything. And so it was just kind of funny. Does that help, Jennifer or Barbara?
I think you have answered both of those robust questions, so I really appreciate that. John, we have a question. How has your life changed for the better since your transition, and what has been the most difficult?
My life has changed dramatically. It just finally getting to be myself has been absolutely stupendous and wonderful. And not understanding who I was or what I was for so many years. And then it's like living in darkness and going into the light. It has been an extremely liberating and freeing thing for me to do. And the hardest thing, the most difficult thing for me was finding myself and realizing this is what I needed to do. And I was just exploring myself, and I felt like I was like an onion and I was peeling back layers. And I came to this layer and it said transgender. And it's like, I don't know that was a thing and that I could be that. And that there it was, I was that thing. And so it's been a joyous experience, and I've enjoyed everything that I've done. My daughter supports me, which was highly important to me. And there were two hard things, very difficult things. One is coming out to family and friends. And for the most part, and you fantasize in your head how it's going to be when you tell someone, when you come out to them, and you can't predict it. You have no ability to predict that whatsoever. So I spend a lot of time, okay, I've got to tell this person. How am I going to tell them? What am I going to do? How am I going to say it? And they're going to hate me. And for the most part, every one of my friends has accepted me. My neighbors have accepted me. And everyone has been just wonderful. And that has been a joyous thing. It was a hard thing, but it was a joyous thing. Probably the most difficult thing I've had is that I've really felt like I've needed surgeries, and the surgeries are more difficult at my age. And to find the right people to do the surgery has been a challenge. The top surgery was right at the top of my list. It's like, oh my God, if I can get rid of boobs, I'm going to be really happy to do that. And so that was a joyous thing to do. Flat chested, it's awesome. But bottom surgery has been more for trans men, is more complicated and more difficult. And finding the right surgeons to do the surgery and even consultations have been difficult. I've had consultations with people that I felt were transphobic, that the doctors were transphobic, and they sort of laugh at you. And that's unacceptable. So that has been probably one of the most difficult things, because I do want full surgery. I want to be as much of a man as I can be. And so the surgeries have been tough, but I think I finally found the right doctors. And I had surgery in New York, the beginning in January of 2020, bottom surgery, and it turned out to be a disaster. And now, you know, I have found other surgeons on the West Coast, and I'm continuing my doctor surgery there. And I developed PTSD from the first surgery, so it was very, very traumatic. But that's been one of the most difficult things. As far as clothing goes, my daughter said, "Why are you getting rid of your clothes? You always dress like a guy anyway." And I didn't even realize that about myself. And then I went to my closet and it's like, wow, you've got 4 pinstripe pantsuits, really? And I always dressed in t-shirts and jeans and wore a baseball cap. So I don't know if that answered the question or not, but the journey continues.
Thank you very much.
But Barb, I have one thing to add to what John said. I've answered PFLAG's emails for over 10 years now. And one of the things that always amazes me, and I was talking to a friend last night about a trans person, and the thing that always surprises me, and it goes back to even something that Mark and Jennifer said earlier, that we are supposed to be in an information age, and we have the internet, and you can look up, you know, with just keystrokes, you can find out anything in the world supposedly. And yet it always surprises me, and John said this about not knowing anything about trans men. And I think maybe sometimes I've been around too long, because I still get things from parents, from gay men, lesbians, trans people, friends of any one of them sent. I have a friend who is one of these letters and that, and they don't know where to look. They don't know where to go for information. And I'm going, wait, Jennifer was talking about her son back in the 70s and 80s and things like this. And I'm going, we didn't have an internet. You couldn't find some of the stuff in libraries. And yet sometimes I think I knew more back when I saw a little thing saying a blonde or XGI becomes a blonde beauty back in the early 50s than some of these people know today with the internet and everything. And I put, I must have either been one hell of a smart kid, or I knew how to use the, what's the thing that we used to use in the library? I can't think of it right off the top of my head.
The card catalog.
The card catalog, and the guy that came up with like way to use the book thing. Dewey Decimal System. Thank you. And that, because it still surprises me that people can't find some of the information. And it just kind of scares me sometimes with all the things that you hear on television, the press, and so forth, that we still have all these questions. And I don't know if we're not doing a good job of getting messages out of where to find help or what, or as much talking as we do, we don't get the message out or what goes wrong, but I don't know. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Hey, I have a question that may be a real simple answer for maybe all or one of you on the panel. When did the word transgender come out? Was it 2012 or 2018?
The word transgender?
Yes.
I'm going to say 1980 would be
Okay.
my guess.
So far before 2012. Transgender.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes. It came out after I got out of college. So sometime in the 80s, it started being used. It's been in use for quite some time. It replaced transsexual. I know it's been longer than the last 20 years.
I just did a quick look up. The word originated in 1971
71.
and
But
was
it-
gradually came to replace transsexual as a bigger umbrella term. So your timing is about right, Lynn. It would have been in the 80s that transgender would have started to appear in all of the material and studies and so on. So yeah, it was coined in 71 and became popularly used in the 80s.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. Great to have a tech guy on the panel, right? Okay.
Good.
A quick question. What are some issues going on today for the LGBTQ community versus a couple of years ago?
I'll start. Right now, the big thing is all the laws that they're trying to pass in different states, especially against trans kids, with puberty blockers, and a lot of states, and I'm not going to mention them, but there's laws that have been passed, and I'd have to check, but I think it's now up to 4 states, where if a doctor even helps a youth, they can be held criminally responsible for helping a youth with any type of medical treatment. And some of it, they think that kids under the age of 18 can have surgery, which is banned in every state as far as I know. There's no state that will allow you to have surgery for any trans issue. But one of the things that they ban is puberty blockers. So far, all the medical stuff that I read, all that puberty blockers do is delays puberty. And if you stop the puberty blockers, you will go through puberty. It's just delayed, but they're making it, in some cases, a criminal offense to even offer this. This is something that a lot of states would allow just a few years ago. There's also a couple of states that are making it almost impossible to change any of your gender markers, which then makes it impossible to get passports, driver's license, or anything that corresponds to your current gender identity. When John was talking about trans men, if you want to look up something as far as bathroom issues, they always talk about trans women going into men's restrooms. If you want to see something scary and making it that you have to go into the restroom that was on your original birth certificate, look up Buck Angel. Buck Angel is a trans man that has a bald head and has a bigger beard, at least the last time I saw him, than Mark does. Has all types of scary tattoos, and only because I can see Rose and Jennifer and Lorraine and Rebecca and Barbara, and if the five of you were in the restroom with Buck Angel, you better hope that you have very good locks on your doors, because if you walk in there and see Buck Angel standing next to you, you're going to be scared to death, because Buck Angel is a scary looking dude. It's one of those things that I don't know if you know Kelvin Grime, but Kelvin Grime was on the East Coast when he was banned from using the restroom when he was in high school. I think he's in Virginia. And his case is now going back to the school board because of the bathroom issue. There's a whole lot of things like that that are going on. The Supreme Court just ruled the other day that because of religious freedom, the city of Philadelphia versus Fulton, they do not have to, one of the families, one of the child agencies there does not have to allow gay couples to adopt. They do not have to give any gay couples the right to adopt children because of their religious beliefs and that. So there's a lot of issues that we thought were worked out a few years ago that all of a sudden are coming back to bite us in the butt. Those are the ones I can think of. Mark, you got any? Or John or Jennifer?
So Lynn mentioned a number of like trans bathroom issues. Those are a thing coming up. Another one that then Lynn didn't mention is trans athletes access to school sports is a big issue that's out there right now in several states. The same-sex adoption issue was it was a recent thing here in Nebraska where a county judge denied a same-sex couple the right to adopt a child and had to be overturned by higher courts. There's also the Equality Act in Congress that has been something that has come up several times recently that would guarantee that people can't be fired for being gay. One really interesting twist to this is that there's a Supreme Court ruling that says that trans people can't be fired for being trans, but there isn't anything preventing gay people from being fired for being gay unless you have a local ordinance in place. We happen to have a local ordinance in Omaha, but elsewhere in Nebraska, you can be fired just for being gay. Another big one that's come up locally here in Nebraska several times is the conversion therapy, where banning conversion therapy for minors. Conversion therapy is where you try and turn a gay person or lesbian person straight. I've been through that. It's it doesn't, first of all, it doesn't work because I'm still gay, and can cause all kinds of difficulty and pain. So banning it is something that's come up a lot. That's a whole list of issues. So we've made a great deal of progress, but there's still a bunch of issues out there.
Thanks for bringing us up to date and opening our eyes to watch for issues in the news. Jennifer, I have a question for you. We're getting close to the end here, but as a parent, what is the most difficult part of having an LGBTQ child? What mistakes did you make?
Well, I mentioned that I thought it would have been good to give our son more support by going physically to where he was. I don't think we didn't reject him, so I can't tell it, or my husband was wonderful. So I can't tell a rejection mistake. I'm trying to think. I joined PFLAG right away. And that was, I remember calling Betty Dorr, who's now deceased, and went to a meeting at that time. It was at, so long ago, it was at First Methodist Church before it moved. And I thought that was really helpful because as we said, I didn't know other people that had gay children or gay sisters or gay brothers or whatever, or gay parents. I'm trying to think. That's a good question for me. That'll be searching my soul all evening.
Jennifer, I think I heard you say before that your faith community was very supportive.
Oh, I did talk about that. Yes, we belong to a Protestant denomination that is accepting. And that was really, and we left a different Protestant denomination and joined when a minister wasn't very kind to us. And he told me that, well, I even hate to say it, but he said he thought our son might fry in hell. And we didn't go back there. And it's a very prominent church in Omaha. But we joined a church where women were early to be ordained and gay marriage was taking place, even though it wasn't legal. And I was just going to add, when you were saying things that are an issue, I think some people were worried about the change of appointments to the Supreme Court and that gay marriage might be, I guess, undone is my word for that. And I certainly hope that doesn't happen. But anyway, have I answered everything that you said?
You have given us a great answer. I appreciate it. There's so much out there and so many questions. We won't get to everything, but I think I would like to say that we've had some audience members that had to leave for other reasons, and they wanted me to pass along their thank you. It's so helpful to our community to hear others share their experiences, to help provide info so that everyone can understand to a higher degree the diversity that exists within the LGBTQIA+ community overall. And I think we could end with, do you feel that your generation and past generations have made it easier for the upcoming and next generation of LGBTQIA+ to be able to come out to their friends, family, and coworkers? Or would you say it's a mixture of generations? And then consider this along with your answers. How would you say, by sharing your lived experiences and educating others about the LGBTQIA+ community, helps to invoke change and perspectives to those who have had some prejudices against them?
That's a long, complicated question, and I'll try and take a shot at making a short answer. I think we've made great strides in acceptance of gay and lesbian and to a degree bisexual people. We still have lots more work to do when it comes to those who fall under the transgender umbrella or who are gender variant in some way. There's lots and lots of work to do there. I feel like we have made a difference. The work that we've done, and by we, I mean those of us who are elders in the community, and let's face it, panelists, we're reaching that point where we can call ourselves elders in the community. I feel like we've laid a lot of groundwork. I've told other people this, I get a little jealous of the gay and lesbian and bisexual kids who come out now in their teens and find so much acceptance. I wish I would have been able to do that. The world was a different place when I was a teenager 40 years ago. And I'm glad to have seen that change. There's still lots more work to do. And that's why panelists like us come on panels like this, is there's so much more to do. And the very most important thing is exposure. And So I always encourage people, if you're in a safe place to do it, come out. The more people around you that know somebody who's gay or lesbian or bisexual or trans, or in some way identifies under the umbrella of queer, the more people that know somebody, the fewer obstacles the next person will face when they come out.
So well said, Mark. Very well said.
Since I've been around such a long time and I've talked to so many people, I can see that it's getting easier and easier for so many people. And I think it helps that just seeing younger and younger people being able to do things that I wish I would have been able to do in some ways, as Mark said, but in some ways, sometimes I think, I don't know if I'm jealous of them, because if I would have been able to make all those changes back 40 or 50 years ago, I would have missed out on my wife and my kids. And so it's sometimes torn between jealousy and saying that I would have missed the greatest things in my life. And, you know, you don't know if the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence or not. So I don't know, but I think that it's great that people are able to be themselves a lot sooner. And I think that's the important thing, that we don't have to struggle so much to be ourselves. And if we can do that and still hold our heads up high, that's what counts. And for that, I'm happy. And as long as people don't have to be fearful for their lives, but it's kind of depressing when you see an article that as the nation gets more diverse, it seems like we have more troubles. And that kind of gets worrisome in some ways, that I don't know if it's good or bad for the country sometimes. And it's not just because of the letters here, it's because of racial and everything else, that with somebody that has a daughter that's married to an African American, another daughter that's marrying somebody from the Middle East. And then we're sitting there at tables with two women for parents. Sometimes I'm going, are we the family of the future, or are we a family that's going to get a lot of people into trouble because of it? And sometimes you worry about some of these things, and sometimes I'm going, no, maybe we're going to be okay. So,
Thank you.
John?
Everybody wants our children to be okay. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we've come a long way from me growing up in the 1950s, and no one talked about anything of any kind. And there was only heterosexual people, and nothing else was ever, even the term heterosexual wasn't even a thing, because you had to be, you were a woman, you were a man, and a woman had very few rights. Also back in the 60s, a woman couldn't even have credit in her name until 1970. You had to, if you were a girl, you had to grow up, you had to get married. You also had to go to college, but you went to college to get your MRS, and that was what you did. And that was how the world was. And a woman could be a school teacher, a secretary, or a nurse if they had an occupation. There were very little rights for women on any level. And that's only been in the last 50 years that even that has come about. But as far as gender diversity and LGBTQ community, we have to, the more education that we can do, the more that we can show who we are and what we can do, and that we're just regular people who we just want to exist. We want to be able to walk down the street. We want to be able to go to the bathroom. And when you think, everyone has, oh yeah, bathroom is no issue. For a transgender person, it's scary as hell to try to go to the bathroom. It's a thing you think about. Or, I spent a lot of time when I first transitioned, I'd hold it till I got home. I could not go in a public place. And that shouldn't have to be, but that's the way it is. That's the world. And there's just a lot of fear mongering that is going on. Oh, transgender people are like the boogeyman. A transgender woman is scary as hell in the bathroom. We have to protect our women and children from them. It's all garbage. But to get rid of that fear mongering and that idea that transgender people are fearful, or that LGBTQ people are frightening people, is just, we just have to do a lot of education to get rid of that. And the evangelical people who say, oh, we are, I had a friend who told me I was definitely going to hell and that God did not love me and never would. And they can love everyone else and forgive everything else, but not that. And God made me. And God made me with this thing in my brain that I had a woman's body, but I was a man, and it did not go away. No matter how far down I stuffed it, it was there. And I'm pleased that there is surgery and there are hormones, and the medical community in general is accepting and know that we need certain things in order to help us to be free and to have a freedom to just walk into Costco and then go to the bathroom if we have to. And that's all we want. That's all any of us want, is to just live our lives and be perfectly wonderful citizens that respect laws and just live our lives and not bother anyone else. But we've got a long way to go, and the fear mongering of the last administration was appalling. And the only way to fight it is by education and showing that we're just people, and we're all just people, and we just need to exist together.
And be sure to vote.
Yeah, and vote. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mark, Jennifer, Lynn, John. We appreciate so much. I have some comments that I'll share to close, but I would like to share one last message from an audience member, so you know that this time that you dedicate to us is worth it. I so appreciate the openness of the panel. As a straight, middle-aged Christian woman, I want to know how to love others, and answering these questions really helps me. Thank you all very much. So on behalf of Metropolitan Community College, I want to thank all of our panelists for sharing your stories, giving perspective to what is happening within the LGBTQIA community. Your willingness to meet with our audiences previously on campus and today virtually has provided access to information that some may never have received previously, clarification for false or misleading claims, and testimony to the change you have seen over time locally and in other locations. To the audience, you are always very respectful and sincere. Questions were flowing, and I so appreciate that. That makes a very interesting and more educational experience for everyone. I'll ask that we put up our evaluation slide, please. Another reminder that we have an evaluation online. It is at mccneb.edu/IIE EVAL. And I want to invite everyone next week on Monday, 10 a.m. to Facing Fear. It's a documentary that I think is particularly relevant to our times, where perhaps being a bully has been promoted in some circles. And so we're going to see the story of a former bully and a gay guy, and how they meet like 25 years after they have a bad incident, right? Called Facing Fear. It's rather short, about 30-minute video, but the really exciting part is the filmmaker will be there to talk with us, and also the two gentlemen featured in the film. So please come back on Monday, 10 a.m. We'll see you all then. Everybody have a good end of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.